This is Whiskey Whereabouts. I'm Tim, and Octomore April continues. Last week, I reviewed and rated Octomore 15.1. Next video, I'm going to do 15.3, but today, in this video, 15.2 gets reviewed and rated. My whiskey journey has taken me to Scotland and back. I've explored whiskey education, tastings, and distilleries from Islay to Speyside. And now my journey continues here, with you, on Whiskey Whereabouts. So if you're not already familiar with Octomore and Series 15 or 15.1, check out the video I did last week. Put a link right up here. Talk a lot about an overview. I reviewed and rated this bottle, 15.1, in that video, okay? But let's get started talking about 15.2. The reason I pulled this one out is that 15.1, 15.2, as is the pattern in these batches, are the same distillate. The difference is in the casks. Normally 0.1 is matured, bourbon matured. This year it's bourbon and recharred bourbon barrels, okay? Those are first fill bourbon barrels on the 0.1. That's a difference from the 0.2. We have second fill American bourbon casks. And I think I read that it is about 58% with 42% second fill red wine casks. Then that vatting is finished. This is the big sort of distinction about 15.2 this year. That's finished in cognac casks. First fill French cognac casks. So it was matured from 2018 to 2023. Then in the first batch cask, and then the rest of the way in the French cognac cask. 57.9% whiskey here with the same identical 108.2 ppm parts per million on the malt, on the barley, the beginning of the process when we measure that. Okay, we talked about that in the last video. Just remember that that doesn't take into account what's going to happen to this whiskey as it goes through the distillation process. And this is going to become very important when we talk about the outrageous ppm number on 15.3. So I have my pour of the 15.2 here, which is lighter in color than we pour next to 15.3. No sherry casks. So going in on the nose neat on this whiskey. Let's see what we can find. It's not as hot as you might anticipate at this ABV. I don't think it's as hot on the nose as 0.1. It's also not nearly as smoky. We talked a lot about this in last week's video, but even though these whiskeys have these outrageous ppm numbers, they present a little less overwhelmingly smoky than you might expect them to, or even less than some lesser ppm whiskeys might, due to some speculating in that first video about as to why or how we got there. But the point is, it's not roaring out of the glass with the smoke. It's a dry smoke, it's subtle, it's underneath. What I'm getting from this, or what I got on the neck pour, was a lot of orchard fruit, a little bit of coconut, some real cedar shavings, and that smoky element. Now, this has been open for a little bit here, for 2 full weeks, and what it's giving me, we've been on a journey in this bottle over that time. This one has really developed and opened up. So what I'm getting now here is real toasty, buttery, kind of creme brulee top, toasted sugarcane sweetness. That orchard fruit I was talking about before was there. It's nutty. There's some almond. There is an element here, bitter, sort of a yin and yang here with that sweetness I'm talking about. And then there's almost a coffee ground plugged into that nuttiness, that inside that walnut shell. Bitter, kind of, but oily, present here. All wrapped up in a real toasty kind of feeling. Not smoky. There's no lingering kind of smoke over this nose. What is there from the peat is integrated. And I would say that it has gone a little earthy. Yeah, there's something damp. There might be that peat influence, but there's something kind of real earthy and mushroomy. So it's exotic. but it's intriguing. There's a lot of different aspects going here. More complications than 0.1. On the nose here. Let's go in for the palate here, neat, on 15.2. That neck pour, again, is real tight. Fairly simple. Rich, sweet, obviously huge mouthfeel on all these whiskeys. Before we put the water in, these ABVs, that's not really a consideration. Here, all that texture is real chewy. Now I'm getting red berry, which is something I expect from wine casks, right? It's a lot of vanilla, creamy sweet. So I'm getting that sweet separating in to different qualities now that it's had time to open up, which is nice. Nutty still, definitely getting some of that. It's very toasty. There is a sort of a tar, real ashy. There's a bitterness that is coming up behind and balancing out, sort of dark, sort of alternate side here of the sweet I described. It's cask, it's tannin, but there's more. Last year's 0.2 had Amarone wine casks, Italian wine, and it has a bitter quality to it, so it had a bitter presentation. This has a little bit of that quality, but it is one that is more subtle than the sweetness. Finish neat. This is the hottest stage. I can still feel the kind of sensation as I'm talking. Really wave of it. You can really feel the heat, and then there's a plume of it. The way you get a plume on a finish from a big peated whiskey like this one in the sinus, but I'm getting the alcohol. I'm getting the burn from that high ABV that it really didn't present at all in that way on the nose. A little bit in the palate. Here comes everything. Also, here comes all the smoke. So much ash. Just like an explosion of ash all over every sort of part of the inside surface of your mouth as this sort of develops. There's more to it. There is sweetness. There is a vanilla cream. There is a leather. There is more of that red fruit. That's in that second wave. It's behind that first push. That big push of the smoke, and the high ABV gives way to some of these flavors. But what is left once that recedes, as it continues to develop, is it is leaving behind more of that bitter. It's casky, it's ashy. There is that presence of that bitterness, which I am sort of on the lookout for, because the neck pour in this whiskey was tight. I had it again. I've had it multiple times in preparation for this video. I had it again a week later. What had opened up was that bitterness. It was really out of balance. We trended in the wrong direction. Now it's been open a couple weeks, and my pour had plenty of time to sit and open, and it's reintegrated a little bit. Vanilla cream toffee gives way to sort of dark chocolate, like really dark, with some of the bitter. But what you're left, again, there it is. There's that mintiness, that crispness at the end. So it's really balanced out. A lot of that one element seemed to kind of get away from it for a second. So the COGNAC Casks was a big experiment. This one is definitely the most exotic. It's the most unusual of the three whiskeys, and it is just like the other whiskeys in that it is huge ABV. And as we learned with 0.1, not only is this a whiskey that we're going to add water to enjoy for the most part, we are going to change its presentation a little bit with the water. Maybe for the better, maybe not. We're gonna find out when we add this. There's just one more thing I wanna do before I put the water in. I have my little pour. I have it in the blue glass, not because it's blind tasting, just so I don't mix up which one is which. This is 0.1, and I just, I'm not gonna note it, but really demonstrates the impact of those casks. Very different presentation. The smoke, I would say, is pretty equivalent. It really presents very ashy across the board. As I talked about in that first review, the char is really strong here. The rest of it is pretty pretty round, pretty, you know, bourbon cask sweet kind of rum. This one is throwing you the curveballs. And that's what we expect from point 2. We expect an unusual cask, and we expect it to be distinctive from this one, even though before it went to the warehouse, these were the same whiskey. And this one is bringing in a totally different sweetness. It really is. There is vanilla, but there is just so much else going on here, like I was talking about. But the biggest sort of difference is outside of that part of the flavor wheel, right? It's the earthiness, it's the herbiness, it's the bitterness, and this one has a lot of different aspects. And I have found that depending on how long this has been open, the balance of those aspects can vary. And I think that's something that happens sometimes, right? Springbank 10 needs to be open for a while before, and that's a whiskey with so many different flavors, right? And it in no way resembles this whiskey, but it is a comparison in that there's a lot of different flavor elements happening, and that neck pour really isn't representative. You have to leave that open for a little bit to really let them all open up and then settle and find their sort of balance. And I feel like that's what's happened with this whiskey neat. But we got to find out what's going to happen with the water. So like last time, I think I've got about, a half pour, probably about 15 mils. And I'm going to do what is going to be the equivalent of about a quarter teaspoon. All right, so the nose with the water now. Okay, so that nuttiness, toasty, almond nut right up front. That cigar box kind of cedar element really prevalent. It's not smoky, it is toasty still. The nose, it wasn't hot before. I'm almost getting a little bit more, and that happens sometimes when you add the water. I'm getting a little bit more of the heat coming off of it, and there is the sweetness. It seems a little more caramel than toffee now. I get some of that earthiness that I was talking about before, and there is that ghost of that sort of bitterness, but it is subtle, subdued. Let's see how the palate has held up. It's still a really nice mouthfeel. This high ABV whiskey, it's obviously non-chill filtered. It's held up to the water nicely. It is more user-friendly. It's more approachable, and I feel like I'm enjoying this more on the palate with the water. The vanilla, I expect from the bourbon cask, the orchard sort of apple, that red berry I expect from the wine casks. That's all there. That's turned up. That sort of bitter cask tannins, that sort of other sort of bitter sour note, it's still there, balancing out those sweeter elements, those fruity elements I just listed. That's turned down just a little bit. And I think it's adjusted it kind of more to my preference. I think I like this balance more. I think that we've lost a little bit of the sort of earthiness. It is still ashy. It is not super smoky. It is not a whiskey that you would pick on the palate alone with water in it in a blind flight and identify it as the 108 ppm at the beginning of the processed whiskey. That's the thing about Octomore. But it hasn't, my point is, it hasn't drowned it. It has not taken away that quality. It's still lively. There's still a sort of dark, kind of swirling, kind of subtle, toasty, smoky ash at the bottom of the experience on the palate. How about the finish though with the water? Big, it's long, it's hot. Getting a little bit less smoke, I think, than I did neat. It's very berry, it's fruit. There's sweet elements that are there. It's more clean. It's less bitter. It's less murky. It has shaved some rough edges off the finish. And one of the things it's done is taken that little bitter element that was there and wrapped it in a vanilla coating. It's a chocolate covered espresso bean now instead of espresso coffee grounds. And it makes it a little bit more pleasant to sit with. You have that finish and then you just sit with it. And having that just touch of it. It is still warming in the chest. I mean, it was a quarter teaspoon of water. It was not a drop. you really would need to just pour a ton of water in this to wash this whiskey down away, because it's just so robust, and there's so much going on here. So do I think the water has improved this experience? Yes. I think I enjoyed this with the water more so than I do without. I don't know that I found anything new, and I do think if I'm doing sort of a checklist on both sides of how many notes I can find neat, I'll probably find more. But I'm enjoying this balance, and I've enjoyed it with time. So this is a whiskey that has really been a little difficult to rate, because it feels like a moving target. This one has really evolved the most since I opened it and got rid of that neck pour. Neck pour was okay, but it was tight. A week later, I was like, I think we're in trouble. This thing's trending the wrong way. A week after that, it has really sort of come back and kind of balanced out in what I think is a nice way. And I'm going to say that this is a nice balance for the 15.1. The Control. It's not my favorite 0.1 I've ever had. I don't know that I love the charred oak, recharred oak casks in it. And I gave it a 4.75. This whiskey has a lot of overlap, given that it's the same distillate. It's a totally, I mean, they're all like Octomore. So within the world of Octomore, it really is a different experience. This one is the most exotic, and it's the one that is going to be the most divisive. You'll like this one more, or you will dislike this one more. I noticed that a lot of people get the sample sets when these first hit, online journalists and reviewers, and they'll all, like, when the new Octomores come out, they'll all sort of hit, and they'll have like a review with little capsule review of each of the samples that they got. They'll give it a little grade, and you can kind of see which ones compare. And I kept seeing this one being the highest rated, and I don't know that I agree. I am going to say that it is not my favorite of the set, but I'm going to give it the 4.75 glasses. I'd probably pick the 0.1 over this. So I guess it's a soft 4.75. Sometimes it's convenient to have the 100-point scale, and sometimes it isn't. And this is one of those times. So now we got to talk about price, because it's Octomore, and Octomores are all overpriced. It's 5-year whiskey, and it costs too much money. It's usually $200, more than $200. And there are reasons. It is what it is. This one costs more than the 0.1. And given that I don't think I prefer it to the 0.1, it's definitely overpriced. But by how much? MSRP on this one equates to about $200 USD. I see it between $2 and $230 as a reasonable price here in the US. I've seen 0.2s go to $300. It is cask strength whiskey. It is made with great care. It is very impressive, and it is unique, and it is limited. There's only so many of these before 16 will come out this fall, so I get that. Fair. I'm not going to penalize it, given that it only costs, it should cost about $20, $25, maybe $30 more than the 0.1. That's not an outrageous jump, especially when we're talking about exotic casks. So I am gonna take a quarter glass away, 4.5. So that's the final rating. It's the equal rating to the 0.1, but I would say that I would probably take the 0.1 over this one, but it's close. So at the end of my last review in 15.1, I said in the next video I would review and rate 15.2 and 15.3, and I was a little bit ambitious given how complex these whiskeys can be and the journey I have been on, especially with 15.2. So it was too much for one video. So 15.3 has already been reviewed. I am going to post that video as a bonus coming up in the coming days before next week's video. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss when the 15.3 review, sort of bonus episode drops. And on Friday, we will have the final Octomore April. We've got a pretty big blind tasting set up. You are not going to miss that. I will see you on the next one.